How you doing? Mr. DJ's back going back to Billboard's Hot 100 once again the week of July the 7th, I believe, 1979, picking out another Last 45. It's on the move, though, that week in 1979, the Marshall Tucker Band, Southern Fried Rock and Roll. They were big down here in the South for sure, and somewhat across the rest of the nation as well. Last of the Singing Cowboys. That week, July 7th, 1979, it jumped from number 81 to number 70. Sure looked promising for a while there, but didn't quite make top 40. They're from South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina. All the guys in this band, they had served in the military. Toy Codwell, the primary songwriter for Marshall Tucker Band, he was a Vietnam vet. They formed in 1972, featuring lead vocalist, songwriter Toy Codwell, also George McCorkle. Their debut album came out in 1973. It was produced by a guy named Paul Hornsby. I found out something about Paul Hornsby that just hits the spot. Paul Hornsby, he's worked with Wet Willie and the Charlie Daniels Band, the Southern rock genre, but in 1967 and 68, Paul Hornsby was in a group called Hourglass. Hourglass had that soulful classic, that soulful rock and roll classic called Power of Love. Talking about the power of love. I think Greg Allman sang on that. Greg and Dwayne Allman was in that group. Plus, there were 2 or 3 other guys in that band that later became session musicians, I believe at the Fame Studios at Muscle Shoals, which is just north of here in Tuscaloosa. But Hourglass, talk about the power of love. Yes, never charted. It was recorded in Los Angeles, but the song never took off. But it was classic. You gotta listen to the song. Power of Love is classic. Blue-Eyed Soul, baby. But anyway, Paul Hornsby produced their debut album. I believe this was off the Capricorn record label. Can't You See was their first hit, but actually it wasn't a hit. It's one of their signature records, but it wasn't a hit. It was re-released in 1977, but only got as high as number 75 on Billboard's Hot 100. But it's one of their best known records still. Chart positions just don't tell the whole story sometimes. Fire on the Mountain in 1975. I like that one. That was written by a group member, George McCorkle, one of the original members of the Marshall Tucker Band. And then in 1977, they hit it really big. Heard It in a Love Song. That went to number 14. That was an AM Top 40 radio classic back in the spring of 1977. A couple of years later, they released another album. Well, here's what happened. The Capricorn record label fell apart. It collapsed. Their label collapsed. Therefore, Marshall Tucker signed with Warner Brothers. They came out with their 9th album called Running Like the Wind. That was in 1978, 1979, and it yielded this classic, a minor hit called Last of the Singing Cowboy. Last of the Singing Cowboy is interesting. Now, the thing about Marshall Tucker Band, now sometimes they act like rednecks. Because I read several years ago, it was an biography about Heart. They made fun of Heart when they toured with Heart because they were like 2 girls in a band and they just, hey, girls can't rock, in their mind. But that was unfortunate. That doesn't say really, that doesn't look too good for the band to do that. Because they could rock. Heart and Nancy Wilson were awesome. But anyway, getting past all the prejudices that existed, particularly back in the day, Marshall Tucker Band, they combined blues, jazz, country, rock, R&B. They were definitely a cut above just being a hillbilly band per se. Hillbilly rock band. This record is laid back. It's easy going. It's got jazz all over this thing. It's got jazz is spreading all over this record. It's a country record, still a southern rock record, but with a jazz overlay. That was the word I was looking for, jazz overlay. And I guess that's all I got to say about that particular record. It's a great storytelling record. Charlie Daniels Band and Marshall Tucker Band, they could tell great stories. And they played great live. They were playing 300 shows a year in the 70s, Marshall Tucker Band. Charlie Daniels said, hey, they came on stage one time and they just blew it away. They blew everybody away. Marshall Tucker. One of my favorite songs by the Marshall Tucker Band came off their 10th album. It was in 1980 called It Takes Time. It was an inspirational record. Back in the spring of 1980, but only got as high as number 80 or 90 on Billboard's Hot 100. Speaking of 1980, tragedy hit the group. It was lethal. They will never regain their commercial success after this happened. Toy Codwell, the bass player, the chief songwriter, Marshall Tucker Band, sustained massive head trauma in a car accident. He died 6 days later. He was replaced by the bass player, another bass player, Franklin Wilkie. Can't read my chicken scratch. But the bottom line is the group got hit with tragedy and they never regrouped. Most of the original members had left the band by the mid-80s anyway. Marshall Tucker Band, last of the Singing Cowboys at number 70 on Billboard's Hot 100.